So when we teach war and when we learn about war in the history books, we often teach it as if this thing happened or that thing happened. And it's clear, what happened on either side. But during a war and when it actually happens, there's no narrator. There's no God to say this is what happened. One side says something and the other side says something else. And it's really hard to decipher, who's telling the truth. And so today I thought we would go through the clearest examples of untrue propaganda from the Russian side and also from the American side. I came across a couple of things while watching the news, and they both struck me as clear and obviously wrong and propaganda. So we'll start with the Russian side, okay? This was a statement by a Russian representative in regards to the nuclear power plant at Zaporizhzhia. So this place is the largest nuclear power plant in Ukraine. It's the largest nuclear power plant in all of Europe. And so Russian forces were attacking the nuclear power plant and trying to take control of it there. And so a fire broke out at the plant, and you had Western and American media, of course, freaking out and saying this might lead to a nuclear meltdown and a giant explosion, killing millions of people. And, there was that possibility. And so the Russians ended up taking control of the nuclear power plant there. And so it was the Russians firing at the nuclear plant. And their response was, no. It was actually, this is the Russian claim here. The Russians said, no. It was actually the Ukrainian special forces that went in there, took control of the nuclear power plant, lit it on fire, and then immediately left. And then that's how the Russians were able to take control of the plant. I mean, such obvious lying I have never heard in my entire life. This is ridiculous. There's no reason why the Ukrainian special forces would set their own nuclear power plant on fire. Even if they were going to lose it to the Russians, they are not that stupid and self-hating that they would try to cause a nuclear explosion in their own country. I mean, obviously they themselves would die from that, and millions of innocent Ukrainians would die from that. So they have no incentive to do anything like that. So you got to analyze the incentives and at least assume that one side is not, willing to kill millions of their own innocent people, especially the Ukrainians who are fighting exactly to preserve the lives of those innocent people. So this is an obvious lie. Now later it came out that the building on fire was not actually the reactor building, but one of the support buildings. So, phew, dodged a bullet with that one. Looks like that nuclear power plant was never going to melt down in the first place. So we're all good. Then from the American side, I have been seeing kind of nonstop on things like CNN, perhaps Fox News, just American cable TV news stations, interviews with either American generals or American CIA officials, former heads of the CIA, stuff like that. And they have been saying that this war is going horribly for the Russians, that the Russians are failing so far. It doesn't really look to me like they're failing. Maybe they're not doing as well as the United States did when it declared war upon Saddam Hussein and Iraq. But Russia is not the United States, and Ukraine is certainly not Iraq. Ukraine also has the backing of the United States and most countries in Europe, sending them all these extremely advanced weapons and everything. So I wouldn't exactly say Russia's doing terrible. I mean, they're outside Kiev. They are knocking on the doors of Kiev, and it's been a few days. They were outside their opponent's capital within a few days of the start of the invasion. So that's not a failure. That's not doing horribly. But why? I mean, why would these, American officials come out and say these things if they're not exactly true? Well, it's to bolster the Ukrainian morale. If they say the Ukrainians are losing, the Russians are winning, from a position of authority, especially, American authority, well, that's going to demoralize the Ukrainians. That's going to lead to reduced support within Ukraine for the war effort. That's going to lead to some people, at least in Ukraine, saying we should give up, we should surrender, we should not keep, fighting this war. And so it's interesting to see that from an authority figure's point of view, well, You can't just call them as you sees them, because that would lead to you demoralizing your own side. And you kind of need to be a little cheerleader or a leader. It's like the coach of a football team. If the coach of the football team told it to the team honestly and was like, guys, we have no chance of beating this other team, well, obviously that's going to demoralize the hell out of the team. You got to tell them, we got a chance. We can pull this off. And that's exactly what the American CIA officials and ex-generals are talking about when they say that Russia is doing horribly and failing, and they're trying to motivate and improve morale, or at least prevent morale from decreasing among the Ukrainians.